Welcome to Cosmic Comics. This episode looks at the return of Squadron Supreme in Avengers Annual issue number 8, published in 1978. The issue opens with Hank Pym in his yellow jacket suit repairing a gem he intends to give to his wife Janet for her birthday. As Hank enlarges to hide his project before Jan enters the room, we learn that the gem he's repairing is Dr. Spectrum's power gem, but is now thought harmless. Jan arrives, impatient to know what her birthday present is. As soon as Hank leaves, Jan can't help herself but to check the dresser Hank closed upon her arrival. Finding it locked, she flies inside, where she finds the power gem. As soon as Janet touches the gem, she is attacked by the consciousness within. Cremone, the Skrull imprisoned within the gem, still lives, and has been waiting for the gem to become whole once more, so that he could seek out a weakened mind and leave the gem behind. Hank unknowingly repaired the gem for a perfect host, as Janet was still weakened from having her consciousness siphoned off mere months ago. Amazingly, this transfer leads to the release of dormant energies within the subconscious of Janet's mind that are expressed in an outward telekinetic burst. This has potential to be an interesting development if Marvel ever decides to follow up on this latent superpower. It could have come from the power gem, but the text says otherwise. Quicksilver hears the explosion and quickly investigates. He's shocked by what he sees in the lab, and before he can react, he's struck down with a powerful blast. Marvel Man arrives and sees Quicksilver passed out on the floor. He wonders who's responsible, and Dr. Spectrum is more than happy to reply. By recombining the gem, Hank allowed Cremone's shattered consciousness to reform. Cremone then took over Janet Pym and made her the latest Dr. Spectrum. Cremone decides that Quicksilver and Wonder Man do not offer anything better than the body he has right now. Instead of leaving them, he ensures that they are temporarily removed from the current situation. As Cremone flies off, we learn that the main reason he kept with Janet's body is that her mind is almost completely dominable, which he finds as a pleasant contrast to the strong-willed individuals he had taken over in the past. Cremone is someone who has the world at his fingers. Right now, there are so many possibilities, and he decides it's best to go right back to the same battles he left off with in his previous appearances. He wants to kick Iron Man's ass and take over Thor. I'll give it to Cremone when it comes to drive, but I'm not sure he's the best guy for coming up with a plan. He soon finds Iron Man, and instead of taking the direct approach, he takes the costume off and ensures he looks like Janet Pym. Iron Man had just finished helping some construction workers when Janet walks up. Before pleasantries can be exchanged, Cremone has already used Janet to get close enough to sucker punch Iron Man. He goes flying. Cremone encapsulates the construction crew, then flies away with Iron Man. Soon, Cremone lands at the Pym residence, where he pulls a capsule from beneath the surface of their pool, where he is keeping a small collection of Avengers on ice. To ensure our heroes don't interfere with his plan to take over Thor, Cremone sends the capsule of Avengers far out into the ocean. Hank, knowing that his wife has been possessed by the gem, watches from inside the house, wondering if he should interfere. He doesn't have time to think on matters long as Cremone shatters the doorway and barges in. Cremone claims to have completely subverted Janet's mind in one panel, while only a few panels later he seems shocked to see Hank shrink down and then get attacked by ants. As often the case, the swarms of flying ants prove more of an annoyance than an effective means of stopping Cremone, who quickly dispatches of the ants and causes Henry to pass out. Before Cremone can finish him off, the rest of the Avengers arrive and are confused to see a female Dr. Spectrum, but immediately attack. It does little good, though, as Cremone makes short work of them all. Miss Marvel is the first to recover, and she returns the favor by knocking Dr. Spectrum through several solid objects. Cremone continues to talk trash as he gets up, but soon finds himself surrounded by Avengers. Even then, he still keeps talking up his game until finally Vision leaps forth from the pool and informs Cremone that he is well aware of his weakness. In his hands are 2 sun lamps, which Vision uses to bathe Cremone in ultraviolet light. To which I'll point out one more time that the sun is constantly pouring down full spectrum light, including that of the ultraviolet variety. The Avengers stand over their defeated foe, and Vision remarks that it was odd that he didn't assume that Iron Man wouldn't share information with the rest of them, to which Ms. Marvel points out that Cremone sees allies as tools and as such would never reveal more information than needed. Hank arrives on the scene and the costume around Janet fades away. As soon as things have settled down, someone calls the Avengers' favorite doctor, Dr. Donald Blake, who between shifts tries to put in some time as Thor, God of Thunder, and thus, without knowing it, the Avengers have once again played into Cremone's hands. He can sense the Thunder God's approach, and the gym begins to glow with glee. Dr. Blake is shown the patient but quickly concludes that she is physically fine, but that the alien mind, currently weakened, still holds her in a hypnotic trance. Hank suggests removing the gem, but everybody is shocked to see that it has become grafted into her nervous system in such a way that removal would ensure death. The Avengers decide they need more information about the prism and should seek out its previous victims in an effort to learn more information. The first stop for the Avengers is Doctor Strange's place, to question him about Dr. Spectrum's previous group, the Squadron Sinister. As per usual, Strange is too busy to see anybody, but does so anyway. After listening to the situation, he informs the Avengers that the members of Squadron Sinister might be morally reprehensible, but they hadn't broken any laws, so he cast a spell on them which caused them to forget the portion of their past that made them evil, and also forgot that they had superpowers. The spell is easily reversed by confronting the squadron about their past, and breaking the spell with one member will most likely break the spell for all of them, and thus putting them all on a path towards evil once more. I gather Doctor Strange doesn't believe in free will, or at least believes that others shouldn't have it. Strange has completely stepped over the line here, erasing people's past, making them forget they have powers. These are the actions of a villain. Now the Avengers split up to confront the various members of Squadron Sinister. This has always confused me some, as that's not what the Avengers initially said they were going to go investigate. They wanted to visit with people who had been in possession of the Power Prism. Somehow that morphed into tracking down all of the Squadron Sinister. Perhaps this is because they will all become self-aware of their past around the same time. I'm not sure, but that seems like the most likely explanation. And, hey, this is the story we get. Queens, New York. Hyperion is running the Arnold Colombo Health Spa under the alias of Mr. Kent. Perhaps a play on Superman's Mr. Kent? We're introduced to the gym with a potential new member getting a tour, Thundra. Mr. Kent interviews Thundra in response to an ad that he placed in a local paper. She shows that she's qualified for the position by lifting several tons worth of exercise equipment. He's ready to talk business with Thundra when suddenly he's distracted by the Avengers walking into his gym. Immediately, Hyperion is pained at the sight of them. Something akin to a panic attack takes hold, and then he remembers. Hyperion remembers the billions of people who died on his home planet. In an attempt to compartmentalize everything that's taking place, Hyperion asks that the Avengers leave, and in response he's attacked by Ms. Marvel. Okay, admittedly, not much of an attack, but walking into a public business and trying to push around the manager after he's asked you to leave is enough to get arrested throughout most of the United States. Ms. Marvel is asked to remove her hand by Thundra, and after failing to respond to the second request, Thundra decides to remove it for her. The Avengers continue to be dicks, pretending that they can do nothing wrong. Seriously, look at what the Vision is saying here. We came here to avert conflict. And then he follows that up with, let me burn you with my eyes a little bit to help you reconsider your recent actions. I know he has a hard time understanding what it means to be human, but he seems to be in touch enough that he should have known that bringing more violence into the situation wasn't going to help matters. One of the gym members attacks the Black Panther, and instead of de-escalating the situation as the Black Panther easily could have done, he decides to toss the guy across the room. Hyperion calls for everybody to halt. He remembers who he is. He remembers Earth scientists destroying his homeworld, and he remembers that he's strong enough to bring this battle to a close. And in that moment, he does close the battle with a clap of his fist. Afterwards, only Vision and Hyperion remain standing. And Vision is kind enough to tell Hyperion that this won't be a fair fight. One of the gym members goes as far as to challenge Vision to fight him without his eye beams. This challenge is answered by getting sucker punched by Miss Marvel. Remember, the Avengers are the one who waltzed in here and started this mess. These guys have every right to stick up for their turf. It's good to see Thunder stepping up and telling her to get ready for a real fight. Miss Marvel is happy to oblige. Meanwhile, Hyperion is angry at the Vision for belittling his response to having his world destroyed. This ends with Hyperion throwing a punch and Vision changing his density and throwing Hyperion off balance. We are just on the verge of seeing Miss Marvel and Thunder go toe-to-toe when Black Panther intervenes and points out that Vision and Hyperion are no longer fighting but talking. Vision is pointing out that Hyperion needs to show more self-awareness by examining the motivations behind his anger, for his own sanity if nothing else. Hyperion still wants to feel that his anger is justified. Vision points out that sorrow might be a better emotion for his loss, and it's time to accept that the scientists of Earth didn't mean to destroy his world, and that Hyperion shouldn't judge an entire planet based on the deeds of a few. Vision tells him that it's time to recognize that the horrible tragedy that took place is something that can't be undone. Hyperion's response is to admit that he feels helpless because, despite being so strong, he can't save anybody from his home planet. Vision then says something that helps Hyperion to gain a more defined focus in his life. He suggests that Hyperion seek out the scientists who destroyed his world and ensure that they don't make the same mistake again. Hyperion concedes. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we've heard this before, and Hyperion has always responded with a resounding, I don't care. This sudden change of heart feels less sincere, but it is what it is. Thunder calls out what we're all looking for, an end to the real fight, but note that really she isn't finishing her brawl either. Caldwell, New Jersey. The Avengers have arrived at the warehouse headquarters of Hudson Pharmaceuticals to visit James Sanders, currently going by Harvey and also known as the Whizzer. The old guard escorting the Avengers through the warehouse calls up to James, letting him know that the Avengers are here to see him, and as he turns, he remembers he's the Whizzer. Every time I see this scene, I have to admit another goes through my head.
Oh. Elaine, that's the second good piece of news I've gotten today.
Really? What was the first?
They're bringing me back. Yeah, I'm the Whiz again. I'm the Whiz! I'm the Whiz!
What about your fact-checking job?
Oh, here's the fact. I'm the Whiz.
He wastes no time in pressing the attack. The Scarlet Witch attempts to stop him with a hex, but he's too fast. Hawkeye clears out the smoke with an arrow before being taken down by Whizzer. Finally, Captain America strikes him with his shield, giving props to his training with Quicksilver for teaching him to connect with a speeding enemy. Once knocked out, Captain America's plan is to continue to keep him knocked out with anesthetics until they solve the problem with Jan. Hold up. The Avengers come into a law-abiding citizen's place of work, kidnap him, drug him, no warrant, no rights. The Avengers are acting nothing short of despicable bullies everywhere they go right now. Alright, let's give them one more shot. And this time we have Beast. And who else? No, seriously, who else is with him? The entire plan was to talk to people who had been possessed by the gem in the past, and when it came to sending people to talk to the guy who actually used to have the power gem, they only send one Avenger? Now that I'm thinking about it, why hasn't anybody reached out to Nighthawk? Wouldn't that make sense as a good starting point? Okay, so the final person getting checked out here is Billy Roberts, who was the last known owner of the power gem. After the gem was destroyed after Kenji Obatu's battle with Iron Man, the gem was found by Detroit sanitation worker Bob Farmer. He located the gem inside of a trash can and completely intact. The last time we saw that same Power Prism, it was shattered in a Detroit gutter. Bob, being pure of heart and a church-going man, he decided to pass the prism along to Reverend Billy Roberts, whose revival was passing through Detroit. Roberts was grateful for the gift, which he assumed would fetch at least several $1,000s and could help fund his services. Before he could sell the gem, it possessed the Reverend for a time, but then the curse was broken. If taken to the gem, the Reverend is certain he can help bring the prism under his control again. Once the beast arrives with Reverend Roberts, some of the Avengers are upset that he's not being serious about the situation, until they all learn that the Reverend had personally overcome the prism's power. The Reverend steps in to assess the situation, warning everybody that he does not have any healing powers, but believes that Scripture may be the answer. And with that, Reverend Roberts makes his move to reclaim the prism. The Black Panther sees what's going on and cries out that the Reverend is as evil as the gem. I love the fact that Robert tells him to be quiet and then insists that he isn't evil. And why not? Because he sees the gem as a gift from God for his years of faithful service. Hawkeye says he's rationalizing, but how could a fundamentalist preacher see it as anything but a gift from God, or perhaps a curse from the devil? In fact, he'd left that part of his life behind, and almost by divine will, the prism was brought back into his life. Additionally, he was capable of drawing the gem forth, even after it had bonded with Janet. God is surely with him on this day. Dr. Spectrum takes out most of the Avengers with a single punch. Away from the action, a physician slips away in an attempt to change form without drawing attention to himself. Spectrum is going to bring his religious ideology to the world, starting with the Avengers, who need to repent. Dr. Blake has finished changing clothes and arrives on the scene as Thor. At this moment, Cremone, who had been allowing the Reverend to control the Power Prism, takes over Dr. Spectrum's form. His singular focus on Thor causes the gem to be tossed towards the Thunder God, who instinctively swings his hammer like a bat in an attempt to swat it away. For one instant it appears as though the gem might shatter, but then the gem appears within the focal point of Thor's hammer. An unintended consequence of the gem not having an owner is that the construct in the ocean containing the three Avengers ceases to be. Iron Man gets Wonder Man and Quicksilver to shore. Iron Man then leaves Wonder Man behind to care for Pietro while he leaves to deal with Dr. Spectrum. By possessing the hammer, Cremone has successfully taken over the mind of a god. He takes down Miss Marvel with a blast from the hammer. Wanda is knocked off her feet by the power of the cosmic storm, and Vision is stopped when he tries to re-solidify upon Thor's hammer. Cremone, for a brief moment, relishes in victory, but the moment is cut short when Iron Man enters the scene. He charges right in, but Thor denies the attack and tosses him aside with a single blow. No problem. Iron Man's just gonna tap into that good old UV weak spot. Only this time, Cremone was prepared, and Thor's godly form protects the gem from the light. There's one more force at work here. Thor's hammer comes with an enchantment placed there by Odin, which states that the wielder must be one who is worthy, and this tainted version of Thor is worthy no more. The hammer falls to the ground, and Iron Man uses the opening to strike hard. Thor keeps coming, Iron Man keeps backing off, buying himself as much time as he can as he knows he can't beat Thor. Little does Iron Man know that all he needs to do is keep Thor and his hammer apart for 60 seconds. Iron Man knocks Thor back into the pool. Before Thor can recover, his hammer reverts back to Dr. Blake's walking stick. In the same moment, the Power Prism disappeared as well. Iron Man helps Dr. Blake out of the pool, and the doctor surmises that when the hammer disappeared, that the consciousness left with nowhere to go, ceased to exist. And Dr. Blake, who had always wondered why Odin had imparted his enchantment of worthiness upon Thor's hammer, now reflects upon the wisdom of this failsafe attribute. Later, the Avengers all get together for Janet's birthday party and have a good time. Wow. The Avengers were pretty atrocious this issue. Everywhere they went caused trouble and left a wake of evil and unresolved plots behind them. Perhaps the cruelest act in this issue was making Hyperion remember his destroyed home planet. Hyperion had already had to experience this loss in his life once already, and forcing him to remember after Doctor Strange forced him to forget means that Hyperion has had to go through the tragedy of this loss one more time in his life. Devastating. They didn't have to take this route to figure out the mystery of how to separate Janet from the Power Prism. They just went along with the first idea that popped in their head and everybody ran with it. Even upon hearing that the result of confronting the Squadron Sinister's members about their past lives would set them upon the path of evil once more, the Avengers chose to ignore the greater good in order to serve their own selfish ends. And this wraps up everything we know concerning Cremone and the Power Prism. To date, he is yet to resurface, although he was mentioned in the very informative Skrulls one-shot as a potential threat to the Skrull Empire that should not be discounted. The next Power Prism I discuss will be from Earth S when I cover the Squadron Supreme limited 12-part series from 1985. Thanks for watching. Feel free to hit any of the buttons below. I'm out.